All right, thank you all for coming out tonight. So today is all about taking control of your finances and not letting your finances control you. And tonight we are here as the Pikes Peak chapter of credit unions. So we've got representatives from Air Academy Credit Union, we've got Ent Credit Union, and Supers Credit Union as well as Aventa and a couple other credit unions, a Credit Union of Colorado Credit Union, one of the two. And really it's just about credit unions giving back. We are not-for-profit businesses that are built to do things like this, give people the knowledge they need to be successful, and that's what differentiates us from the banks. So we're all here as a collective to give that financial education. Today we have Bree Shalito and Jennifer Luthi, who are gonna be our presenters, and I'm gonna hand it off to them.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here today. I'm Jennifer Luthi. I am a branch manager for Air Academy Credit Union up in Monument. I have been in the financial business for the last 2 years, and I'm a certified financial engagement coach. So I help with the budgeting. I can definitely get in there, get with you. Everybody's budget is different, which we'll learn about in a little bit. But super excited to be here, guys.
Thank you, Jennifer. And my name is Bree Shalito. I'm the Senior Manager of Community Impact for Ent Credit Union. Just like Zach and Jennifer, my team goes out into the community, teaches financial education, and just wants to share information with folks like we are tonight. As Zach said, we are the Pikes Peak chapter of credit unions. Credit unions as a whole are all about people helping people and also just sharing free financial education, but also working with other credit unions. We're technically a co-op, so co-ops work with other co-ops, and we want to work with other credit unions to share knowledge and just make sure that all of our communities are cared for. So tonight we're going to be talking about money mapping. If you haven't already, if you can try to get signed in either by scanning this QR code here or going to menti.com, that's MENTI.com, and putting in this 8-digit code. I'll read it in just a moment for those that need it. Not only will you be able to interact with our presentation with this tool, you can ask an anonymous question at any time, and you also can see everything right on your phone. So if that's easier for you, I know this is a small projector, so if you want to see it closer to you and be able to zoom in, that's what you can do. So menti.com, MENTI. The code is 98360971. Let me know if anyone's having a hard time getting connected that wants to be. If at any time during the presentation we're doing anything interactive, this code will also show up at the top. So certainly just let me know. It also may go away on your phone. Just refresh it. It should stay along with us as we go. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. It froze. Let's see. Uh-oh. It's going to go for us. Oh, come on. Okay. All right. So tonight, the main takeaways that we want you to take away are going to be budgeting methods, budget busters, and different types of savings. So we'll talk through all of that tonight, but we hope that those are the takeaways that you get from our class today. So before we get started, we're going to use this tool to interact. What words do you already associate with budgeting? When I say budgeting, what does that make you think of? What words? So if you don't mind putting those right in there. Give me just a second to do that. It does let you submit multiple times. So if you don't have 3, I think it shows you 3 right away. Yeah. The code, yep, it is 98360971. Awesome, we've got some great words coming in here. Planning, plan, expense, tight. Smart spending puts me in a box, I get that. Difficult, intentional, accountability, miserable, I get that too. We're going to talk about that for sure. Stress, yeah, income, organization, Accountability, a few more of those. As each person puts in the same type of words, it gets bigger, but you guys have a lot of great words. A lot comes up when you talk about budgeting. Sometimes we think about it like we think about diet, restricting, so all of those things. So perfect. Okay. What we're really looking for, though, when we talk about planning for your money is finding out where you're going. What is your destination? If you were to use maps, Google Maps, Apple Maps, and you didn't put in anywhere to go, then you're not going anywhere. There's no plan. There's no final destination in mind. So starting with that, starting with the budget, starting with a plan is exactly what's going to get you on that route. So think about, where are you now? How much are you spending on certain things? Getting an idea, getting your hands wrapped around it. Where is your money going? Where do you want it to go? What do you want to put in? What are some of your goals? We'll talk more about that and kind of how to set those aside in the future. And then also, how do you want to spend your money? If you haven't looked at it, if you don't know where your money's going right now, you don't know if that aligns with any of your values or how you actually want to spend. So getting something like this in place actually provides financial security and a destination so that you have an idea where to go next. Knowing what's just on your horizon. Every budget in this room is going to be different from the other. So looking ahead, finding out what fits in with your life, prioritizing, doing your research on ways that you can save, things that still fit into your life, but maybe at a lesser cost. Sometimes just analyzing those things every couple of months, whether it be a phone bill, internet bill, those sorts of things can be negotiated and you can be paying less for the exact same product. So just looking across those. Saving what you can, ideally what you want to save for, we'll talk more about that, and just knowing what your resources are. Certainly in Colorado Springs, but in other places, there are resources that can help. As financial coaches, as many of us are and certified as financial coaches, often folks will come to us and say that they can't afford their rent. That's tough, and rent here and mortgages are really expensive, but getting assistance for rent or mortgage payments is really hard. Sometimes it's easier to get assistance for other things like food, utilities, internet, and by having some of those things, knowing what resources are out there, that can actually allow you to allocate more money towards rent by getting some of those other things versus chasing down assistance with rent. So just understanding what those resources are. I'm going to turn it over to Jen to talk through some of those strategies. Sorry, we're also doing this mic thing, so it's going to just take just a second when we transition.
Do you want them to do the values? Sorry. No, it's fine.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We're sharing one mic. All right, so we're going to talk about a couple of different budgeting strategies. The best way to stick to your plans and your goals that you make for yourself is to find a budgeting strategy that works best for you. We will talk in just a few minutes about one that we particularly like, but there's a lot of other ones that you could use if it works for you. Everybody's different, so you just have to try them out. I've tried more than one of these out, and I found the ones that worked best for me, and I will tell you, mine's actually on this screen, not on the next screen. So one of those ways is what we call an envelope. That is where you have envelopes that you set aside. One says utilities, one says food, transportation, and you are putting cash into those envelopes. Now with banking nowadays, you can have multiple accounts, so you don't have to use cash. But just know that if you decide to use this method, once the cash is gone, that one is done. Any money that you put aside for entertainment, you put $50 in there, you go out to the movies, it costs you $50. Don't put any more in there until the following month. Then we have what we call zero sum. With this strategy, every single penny that comes home is designated to a spending spot, which means you take a look at those paychecks, and every penny that comes in, it goes to a different section to help budget. We have automatic. Those are simple and exactly as the name suggests, automatic as much as possible. So bill pay, you've got things coming out of your debit card to where you never have to write a check anymore. You never have to call and make that payment over the phone. And then we have something that we call reverse, which is prioritizing savings or debit repayment. It's a heavy emphasis on that savings part, is you want to save by paying things off. Sorry, I don't know this one as well as Bree does, so I do have a cheat sheet. So a big one that a lot of times that we're looking at is what we call the percentile method. This method keeps things simple. You can move things around. You can kind of figure out that percentage that works best for you and what you're trying to accomplish in your goals. All spending is broken down into 3 categories. We have needs, wants, and savings. And you take those and do a percentile. So on this example, we have 50% on needs, 30% on wants, and 20% on savings. We will go into needs and wants a little bit later on during the presentation. And this is based on take-home pay, so after your taxes come out. Oh, that went too far. Okay, so here let's kind of look at our needs and wants. On your Menti, if you want to go ahead and participate, move those lines on what you think is a need and what's a want. You can put it in the middle. You can have some fun with it. I'm going to give you just a few minutes to do that, and then we're going to talk about them. Okay. All right, so it looks like we're staying right about there. So let's talk some gray areas. I see with subscription services, a lot of people got that more towards the want side. It could actually be both. You don't see a whole lot of cable anymore. You don't see the basic channels that you used to years ago showing up on the TV. So a subscription service can actually be a need as well, especially if you're somebody who enjoys watching a show every single night, somebody who's got a show that they're really into and they want to finish it. Same thing with travel. Yes, it's more of a want, but you may have to travel for work. You may have to travel for a family emergencies, which would then bring that travel to a need. So any one of these can actually be a need or a want, meaning that there's so much gray area there that it kind of just depends on what's going on in your own life on how that's going to fall. Okay, so this is kind of just a sample budget that we kind of put together. At the end of our presentation, we are going to hand out budget sheets for you guys to do, but that way we are also available for questions if you have any. So the first thing you kind of want to account for is what income is coming in? So your paycheck after those taxes. Any additional income? Do you do anything on the side? Do you have any extra money coming to you every single month? You want to account for that. So then we've got our total income, money going out. Of course, those are those wants and those needs. Housing, that's always going to have to come out. Food and groceries, transportation, utilities, dining, travel, entertainment, and savings. So it's going to kind of break that down for you that you will actually be able to see. Like I said, at the end, everybody's going to have a chance to kind of touch base with this. Now, a really good idea is when you're doing your budget, take a look at the last 3 months of your bank statements. Really go in there with a fine tooth and comb, seeing what you are spending your money on every single month. Everybody's budget is going to be different. We've already said this. If you have any questions or you've got something where you're just not understanding, go talk to one of those financial coaches. We are here to assist you and help you build this. And just know that this month might be different. Next month, it could be a totally different budget. It goes back and forth. It's never the same. All right, Bree is going to come on up and she's going to take over here.
Okay, no problem. There's a pretty famous individual out there. Who's heard of Dave Ramsey? So Dave Ramsey has some incredible savings principles. His credit principles are a little argumentative, but as far as how many folks fail that program comes down sometimes to needs and wants. A lot of times, if you're just focusing on the needs and really getting down to it, that can be great. And if you're a very disciplined person, that works. But fun is necessary. We have to have a little bit of fun in there. So that's where needs and wants comes in. If we're talking 50, 30, 20 like we were before, 50% of that being needs, that may or may not be accessible for you. So that's where there's a little bit of wiggle, but having an idea of where you want to spend your money and where you want those things to go is helpful. The easiest category to pull from sometimes is the wants, but making room for the things that you want and having fun in life is definitely going to keep you on track much better. So just making sure that you're taking time for your needs is imperative, and just knowing, like Jen said, with these needs and wants, tons of gray area, lots of different things in here. So making sure that you fit to yours, and that really leads us to understanding your values. We've actually got a sheet here. I'm going to send it over to Zach, because ideally understanding what you value really helps you determine how you want to spend your money. So we're going to pass out this sheet. I'm going to pass it over to Zach to tell you a little bit about it, and we'll do this activity together.
All right, everyone. While those are coming around, I think we just messed them. But I still think it's worth giving a hand of applause to Little Howard's Barbecue. James came out, fed us all, so we can just give him a round of applause. All right. Now, it's important to keep everyone fed. It's how you get more engagement, right? So this sheet that's coming around, it's really designed to help you get to the bottom of what's important to you and what's important to your budget. You know, there are a lot of people that come into these counseling sessions and are like, I can't give up my Starbucks. That's okay if that's what's important to you. It's about knowing where you're spending your money and not just mindlessly going to Starbucks and spending $5, $7, $10 every day without having that budgeted. So on the back of our sheet here, we've got a list of values. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off by going through and circling 20 of them. So if it sounds good to you, just go ahead and give it a circle. And then after you do that, we'll kind of go into the next section where we're trying to narrow down our list. Yes, does anyone need pens? Do we have everything? Looks like we're all right in here. So huge list of values, just give them a quick skim, circle them if they sound nice, and then we're going to work on paring that down to a list of 5 values. So you start off with 20, you're going to get it down to 10, then you're going to get it down to 5. So overall, we're looking for a top 5 values that should direct your budget. And as you're getting down to that list of 5 values, in that bottom section, we're going to write down what are the things that we spend that align with those values. That's going to be on the left-hand side. And then on the right, where is our money going that doesn't align with those values?
See if I can just get close enough to the mic. But some of the examples might be something like family and friends. So if you've written down family and friends of either of those, or let me see, you have family, great, family's on here. So one of the values that you might have is spending time with family. So if that means getting together for a meal, getting together for an activity, that absolutely is part of your values. So actually, if you spend money on Sunday dinner with your family, definitely an item that fits right on that checkmark side. If you are otherwise just sometimes spending money on lunch by yourself while you're at work, that's not in line with that family value. Maybe it's in line with another value, so it may still work. But if not, making sure that we're allocating more towards our values, because that's going to make us happier as human beings, is definitely key. If another one of yours is safety, when it comes to perhaps purchasing a vehicle or making decisions about where you might travel, these are things to consider. What do I value? Am I spending my money in line with that? We'll talk about it more, but just want to give a few examples.
All right. As you all are working, does anyone want to volunteer what one of their values and one of their budget items aligns with? I'm not going to put your budget on blast by any means, but does anyone have that? Yeah.
Well, it applies to two of my values, fun and like three, fun, family, and parenting.
Okay, fun, family, and parenting.
Yeah, but the soccer league that my daughter plays for
Perfect.
allows for all of us to kind of come together. It gives us an excuse to get out of the house, and it's like cost money, so that's why I put it in my budget.
Yeah, so it was fun, family, and what was the third one? Parenting. And it was the soccer league that her daughter is in. And we all know kids and sports are cheap, right?
Any activity for that.
Just the gas alone driving back and forth, right? Are there any others that anyone wants to share? Yeah, yes, sir.
Generosity.
Generosity, all right. And did you have a line item in your budget that correlates to that?
We do, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, we just like blessing others and giving to God and people that serve God.
Yeah, giving back through worship wherever you do. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any others? Trying to give you all a little bit of time and still kind of fill the air here. Does anyone need more time to keep going through this activity? All right, I'm not seeing any. I'll hand it back off to, I think, Bree here. There you are.
Thanks, Zach. Those are perfect examples. Another one that I like to use sometimes if you're somebody who values fitness. Oh, yes.
So a lot of you on here, I feel, are into time and not money.
Yeah.
The time is money, depending on what you value. So I think that that's where I'm having difficulty. Like I value grace, but there's no monetary anything to do from there. For spirituality, you think that spirituality is just tithing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a time element versus a monetary element that's
Yeah.
missing from this value.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, just the timing in general, and you're so right, using that example of spirituality. And so maybe spending time, and same goes for even a value like generosity. If you don't have the generosity to donate to some of your favorite charities, for example, just finding different ways that you can give back if time is something that is actually more abundant than money. And if not, just finding a balance between those. But identifying some of these values allows, when you're creating a goal, to think about, why is that my goal? If a goal potentially is to purchase a new vehicle, or maybe not a brand new vehicle, but a vehicle for your family, what is that gonna make sense to do? For you, it would definitely be fitting the family and some of the soccer gear, right? Like, is this vehicle going to help me towards my goals and fulfill my values at the same time? So not all of them are monetarily driven, but certainly as we create different things around our budget, making sure that we're reflecting on those values. What is the importance? What is my mindset as I'm creating some of those things? And just really planning for the future. Because today we're going to talk a lot about savings, but also that emotional connection to our money. Because sometimes what really helps is having an idea of where your money's going, such as my car down payment, and I'm gonna put a true title on that. It's even better if you can actually decide what that's gonna be. Minivan for soccer or something else. Tying an emotional connection to your goals is huge, because if later I wanna transfer some money out of one of these things when I've put a true goal and a time frame on it, I'm so much more likely to transfer out of something that simply says savings, because I'm like, savings for what? Than I am if I'm really wanting to go on that trip to Tahiti. Maybe I'm going on a mission trip. Maybe I'm going on something that's going to make a huge difference in my life and apply to something like spirituality or something like giving back. So in those instances, the likelihood that, unless it's a true emergency, and ideally we'll talk about having an emergency savings as well, the likelihood that I'll pull from those goals because I've got that emotional connection is much, much less. So having that emotional connection based on something that you value just makes it that much stronger. So we're going to dive into just some different types of savings and what those can look like. So periodic savings is one of the first ones on a pyramid, and those are just savings for things that are going to come up. In a few moments, we're going to talk about emergency savings, but also just defining in your mind what an emergency is, because if you own a vehicle, having to replace something like tires is not necessarily an emergency. Now, it may be defined in your emergency savings as something that you might use, but unfortunately, they have yet to come up with a tire that lasts much longer than 50, 60,000 miles. So we know that owning a vehicle and keeping up on some of those things like typical maintenance is what we're going to be using this periodic savings for. Same goes for child activities. As Zach mentioned, those are not cheap. So as we know those are coming up, those are perfect things to set aside, especially if we know that that allows for our family to get together, to have a good time, for our children to be, just physically and also emotionally involved with other people. So having a periodic savings means that you contribute to it as regularly as you can. I know we talked about in the 50-30-20 method that 20% goes towards savings. That also goes towards debt reduction. So I understand that 20% of everyone's paycheck cannot go towards, God bless you, go towards someone's savings, but certainly just deciding what those things are that you're going to save for helps to contribute, and then as we look across other budget items to find where we can save. So periodic savings is the very first one. Those are the ones we want to get started, and then having that safety net savings for things that are going to come up. The safety net savings and emergency savings, as it's often called, is discussed pretty frequently, but the best thing we can do is get it started. So few folks in America have anything saved or put aside. It's really only about 40% of people, and that number goes up and down, of people who have $400 or more saved. And for those who have children, those who own homes, $400 can be gone in an instant. So sometimes if we don't have anything saved aside or set aside, we're depending on loans and credit cards, which is a great backup if needed, but can be pretty expensive in the long run. So it's going to end up costing you more either way. So having something set aside for emergencies and feeling that is also a psychological connection, because then you're feeling that safety if something were to happen. It's not a continual stress response. So the best thing you can do is just get one started. Even if it's $1 per month, whatever you can manage to start setting something aside for an emergency. Ideally, if you're someone that's a little bit compulsive, if you can open an account that is not easily connected to your checking, sometimes folks find that helpful. Opening that at another bank or credit union, if that's even more helpful for you, it's great to still have access, because that's our other point down here, is easy access. You want to be able to access emergency funds within about a 24-hour period. So if you put it into something like an investment that's not as easily accessible for when you have an emergency. Now, like I said before, a lot of folks depend on credit cards for emergencies, and that's not the worst thing as long as you've got a backup plan to get that paid. Otherwise, it's going to cost you a lot more. And if we're talking about an emergency, that's already stressful, so adding interest to that doesn't help. But I would not recommend easy access, meaning that you carry this emergency savings with you. So having something like a debit card, credit card, something that you can take care of the emergency in the moment and then pay it off later. Yes?
What if you used your savings to pay off debt? So you have like a 790 as a credit score.
Yeah.
Do you think it's worth it to have a credit card that you have as a safety net because you have actually contributed to paying off the debt to be able to have the credit to secure a credit card for
Yeah.
emergencies?
We are doing a virtual session, just put a quick plug. And Zach, when is the one we're doing about credit? March. So it's a little ways out, but we're doing a full credit session, but I would recommend that. I know that some folks are a little wary of credit cards. Just to put it out there, a credit card, if you're paying it off, ideally if you're paying it off, you're not even paying a penny in interest to do that. So in an event of an emergency where you need to actually have something to be able to do that, to pay for that emergency and then pay it off if you can, is highly recommended. Knowing your credit card would be the next biggest thing. Knowing what the interest rate is, especially if you have more than one. We hear that so often that folks don't know what the interest rate is. So in the event of an emergency, I don't think anyone's going to be like, hang on, let me get my credit card statements to see what the interest rates are. Even if you have that somewhere safe, so you know which of these should I use in the event of an emergency, especially if you can't pay it off right away. There's tons of them out there. They're different for every person. So depending on how you spend your money, that's how you're going to want to select one. But ideally, if you're going to use it as an emergency fund backup, you want to find one with a low interest rate, which typically means it's not going to have rewards associated. The better the rewards, typically the higher the interest rate. Yeah.
What about a secured credit card? Do you think that those are good for safety nets?
It can be good. The trouble with a secured card, exactly. So you've usually put the money forward for that secured card. They're usually in that sense fairly low. So $300, $500, $1,000. You provided your money up front in order to have it. So in those cases, if you're using it because that is the case and you've maybe put some of that aside to be able to build up that credit, it's not the worst idea. But in that case, and especially if you're putting a large amount on it, anytime you go above 50% of the limit, it actually begins to hurt your credit. You ideally want to keep that under 30%, getting way into the weeds on what we're going to cover in March. But it was mentioned before, our credit unions, each of us offer free financial coaching and counseling. So if anyone, member or non-member, wishes to talk about that more in depth with somebody and be more personal about it, highly recommend. You can schedule usually an appointment with any of our websites or call in. Yeah.
This credit session you mentioned in March, is this one parent's challenge or is this
Yes.
something else?
Specific for you all. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Excited to do that. March 5th. Fabulous. Thank you. All right. Oh, I knew I was going to lose it. Nah, lost it. Oh, yeah, it came back. Okay. So the next one is just calculating your goals. What are those going to be? Are you somebody that does need some savings set aside for a child, for a car? What are the types of things in your life that may cause an emergency? Typically, it's going to be where you live, how you transport yourself, how many family members you have. So an idea of calculating goals. Defining the emergency. These two go together because we talk about known unknowns and unknown unknowns, which sounds confusing, but the known unknowns is what we were talking about before. Now, tires, like we talked about with cars. You know you're eventually going to need tires. Now, you may actually hit a pothole or a big nail or something. Now, that you did not anticipate. There may be plenty of tread left on that tire. That potentially could be an emergency. And in that case, that's an unknown unknown. You did not know that your tire was going to pop. You did not know that a big repair was going to happen. But those other things like tires, oil changes, general just vehicle maintenance is kind of a big one that tends to fall in the emergency category. Same thing goes for home maintenance. And then also things like medical. If you have known medical things with your children, with your families, just having those deductibles, those things in place, knowing what those things are going to be, and in some cases, having multiple emergency accounts where you know where the funds are going to go. So emergency savings is a big one. Definitely recommend having something in place just for your overall well-being. The other is long-term savings. So these are things that we're setting aside for our values that we know that we're going to want in the long term. Typically, those are things like retirement, but can also fall in line sometimes with down payments for different homes. Also, those big vacations that you have planned, whether that be for business, personal, or just general service. And then can also be for education for children. Now, there's different types of accounts that are specific for these different types of needs. So understanding some of that, especially for those that are tax deferred, things like 401ks, 529 plans, because a lot of times those sound great on the surface, but if you're not knowing that those are the routes that you're going to go, or even that your children are going to go, those are typically designated for that specific purpose, and if they're used for anything else, carry some pretty lofty tax penalties. So you want to be sure that as you're deciding where these different things are going to go, that that's what it's going to be used for. Because general savings can be great for any of these. But those specific plans that are really for taxes, if you're using it for anything else, then that's really tough. In other states, they've adjusted some of the 529 plans to be used for K through 12. Colorado has not yet done that. So right now, a lot of those are used specific for college. So if that's a route that you haven't yet talked about with your child, especially if your child's young, then that can be really tough to decide to put money there and then pay the tax penalties later. So having an idea of where you want those funds to go is huge, especially when it comes to long-term savings. Some of the other things that are going to bust your budget, Jen is going to come up and talk about and share just a little bit more, but we will talk about those and see where you can potentially be saving. Of course.
Hold on to that. I'm going to this time.
Oh, other way maybe.
Great, I know. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit of budget busters. These are things that can seem very small, but can add up very, very quickly. So some of those things, and we'll get into each one of these, is spending habits. You know, take a look at your bank statements. See what you're spending that money on, like I said earlier. Are you going out for coffee 3 times a week? Going out to lunch more than what you might realize? If that's important to you, that's totally okay. You just want to make sure that you put that in your budget. If it's not 100% important to you, let's look at cutting back and maybe only doing that once a week or once a month even. Then we have impulse buying. Know what your triggers are. Know what stores you feel comfortable in going to where you're not going to spend extra money. In stores, they are taught on how to upsell. They are going to do everything that they can to get you to spend more money. That's what their job is. But having a plan before you go into those stores will help you to make it to where you're not spending that extra money. Into a grocery store, always take a list. I know some people really like where they can order their groceries online, and it's because you're not in the store hungry or maybe even upset and you see something that's like, nope, I want this because it's going to take care of a craving that I have or no, I will have later. So if that works for you, do grocery shopping that way instead of going into the store. Then we have retail therapy. A lot of people don't think this can add up, but it definitely can. Definitely spend money on yourself. With savings, you always put money aside for you. You are the most important. But if you're doing this once a week, once every couple of days, retail therapy can really add up, and it adds up very, very quickly. All right, so sneaky subscriptions. On an average, you're spending $219 in subscriptions alone. Subscriptions nowadays come in every which way. There's streaming services. You can get boxes for your dogs. You can get clothing delivered, food prep delivered. Most of the time, this is going to be a monthly charge to get those subscriptions every month. So there's a lot of things that people don't realize that they could be doing to try to help save some of that money. So 74% of people say that it's easy to forget recurring monthly subscription charges. With these, set a reminder on your phone. You can set it up to where it tells you, okay, on August 2nd of every month, We've got this subscription coming out, this one, and this one. 56% do not share streaming services with anyone. When it comes to another way to save money, if you're watching a show, let's say on Hulu, your next show that you want to watch is on HBO Max. You can cancel Hulu and reset up HBO Max and only have the subscriptions out that you're currently using. We don't need Disney Plus all the time. We don't need Hulu. There's so many of them out there. I can tell you I have 3 myself, and there's one actually I'm not watching.
One of the worst is bundling.
Yes.
It sounds like it saves you money, but if you are not actively using each of those services already, try not to bundle your services. That's one of the quickest ways they can get you attached to all 3, because then ideally canceling one, it gets a little bit messy. And I won't ask you to call yourselves out, but raise your hand in your head. How many of you have more than 2 streaming services? You can keep your hands down. Just think about it in your head. How many?
I'm okay. I will raise my hand.
2. How many of you have more than 3? Close your eyes. 4. 5. I know. And I teach this stuff for a living. I watch a lot of TV. It doesn't fit into my values super well, but we've gotten a lot better that as a show is no longer on the streaming service I'm watching, there is now sometimes a pause on a few of them or a cancel because they just eat right into your budget. It seems low, $9.99. I think Netflix is up to $19 or maybe even $21.
Something around that.
It adds up really fast, and $219 is the average. Some are lower, some are higher. It catches up.
Yep. Most definitely. And 42% continue to pay for recurring charges that they're no longer using anymore. They have not touched it in months. They've not touched it sometimes in years, but they don't realize that they're still paying for it. So it's just something that can definitely add up to a whole lot of money that you're spending every single month when it comes to that budget. All right, so now we're going to talk about another cycle that can really go into your spending habits. It's what we call the lifestyle inflation. This is where you get a raise at work because you're making more money, you are now spending more money. When it comes to, it's easy to fall into this cycle because you end up living to paycheck. It's where you know, okay, I'm about to get paid, this paycheck is gone, now I have to wait for the next one to come in. It is very easy when you get a raise at work, a promotion at work, you get super excited. So that does come with more money, but then you're out there spending more money. Have it be for fun things that you want to go do, have it be you add on an extra subscription that you did not have before, but you really, really wanted. It gets you in this trend and it keeps going. The cycle can become very, very vicious and you want to do everything that you can to get out of that cycle. Resist unnecessary upgrades. Some upgrades are needed when it comes to certain things, but you don't have to always take an upgrade on computer equipment, on your cell phone. I will tell you, I don't have the newest phone out there because I can't afford it. I like my little Samsung and I'm happy with it. And when a new one comes out, I don't worry about it too much. You don't need that upgrade. I know if I'm talking to anybody who loves their iPhones, a lot of you guys think you do. And when it comes to those Apple products, but maybe 1 month and you get a raise, you don't do it. Let the upgrade go. Develop a habit. That is the most important thing, is getting to yourself where you have a habit of saving and not going into the cycles and spending the extra money, because habits can take anywhere from 21 days to develop. But once you have that habit going, it's actually going to really help you out in the long run because it's going to be easier and easier for you. Yes. Yes.
On this note, it's the best time when you get a raise, start investing in your 401ks, into your IRAs. You hadn't budgeted for that money before. It's the best time to start investing in your long-term success and that retirement stage.
Set aside a small amount to treat yourself.
Yes.
And then
Yes. Okay, so there are a lot of really great tools out there that can help with this if you're somebody who just likes to kind of do it by yourself, and that is totally okay. One of those tools that we really like to use is called Money Insight. It kind of lets you, it easily tracks and categorizes your spending. It can help you create budget to help reach those goals, and it can also help find different budgeting tools that work best for you. And then, like I said, and like me and Bree have said, it's like all of our credit unions offer that free financial coaching. Come see one of us. We are more than happy to sit down with you. Yes. A little bit, yes, but not as extensive as QuickBook is.
Most of these, you get to decide kind of where your money is going and like have an idea. So the great part about these, and there's lots of them, there's if you check with your bank or credit union, there's probably one in your online banking, but also there's Mint, Personal Capital, there's tons that are out there. But the most magical part about these tools, if you haven't used one before, is it usually takes your most recent 3 months, as Jen said, it puts it into a budgeting tool and kind of just provides a little bit of a reality check of like, ooh, is that how much I wanted to budget towards that specific category? And just the idea of like, here it put together this basic budget based on your 3 months of spending. Now, of course, there's going to be some anomalies potentially in your budget depending on what's happened in your life, but these sorts of tools are somewhat like QuickBooks, but they start working on their own. And a lot of them have gotten really smart to the fact that if you have a charge at a gas station for less than $10, it typically will automatically allocate that to food instead of gas, because the likelihood that you bought less than 2 gallons of gas. Now, you can usually reallocate it if that is what happened. Maybe you drive a moped and so that only took a gallon, but you get to decide where those go and choose for the future of where those go after that. And then it kind of just works on its own. Keeps you accountable to a budget. Sometimes there's different things like bubbles. We're going to give you a budgeting sheet here in a few minutes, but I mean, if that style doesn't work for you, don't use it. Whatever style works for you, if you're somebody that loves QuickBooks, keep using QuickBooks. Yeah.
I was told to get QuickBooks, but it's really expensive.
Yeah.
And I am an member.
Oh, yeah.
What is it that you use and how do I get
Money Insight, it's exactly that. So it's right in online banking. And if not, like if you're not a member of a credit union or a bank, there's other ones that are out there. Mint is my favorite that's out there. It's completely free. Some of the other ones do have a cost associated. Typically, the free version is really all you need to do a lot of that and get started. If you love it and you want to dig in even further, that's fine. But the best thing you can do is use a budgeting method that works. If that's a bar napkin, if that's an Excel spreadsheet, whatever is going to keep you accountable and keep you going back to it, that's great. We aren't asking you to do anything brand new because typically that's not going to work. And if you're not somebody that's going to keep up with that, then there's no point in that. But these make it super easy, these personal financial management tools, because everything that comes in, it just allocates it right away, and you can usually pull in your credit cards, additional bank accounts, 401k, so you can see everything in one place and create one budget versus having to log into several different tools and put it all together.
So why do you prefer Mint to your own?
I like ENTs as well. I definitely use that. I just know that not everyone here is an ENT member. It may be another credit union or a bank, so want to make sure that you have tools that you can access to. I also use Money Insight because it is a smart tool that can put things together. But if you're not with ENT already, if you're with one of these other great credit unions, then there's other tools out there too. Does Air Academy have one within online banking?
No.
We use mostly our Excel budget sheet,
Yeah.
so we're going to pass that out, and then we're also going to give all the handouts to Melissa. So if you want the electronic copies of them, you can find them on the Parent Challenge website.
Okay, yes.
So I have two questions. We have a lot of high school students, even people who are getting ready to go off to college, so people maybe choose not to go to college and, get a certificate that's gonna guarantee them $60,000 as a 19-year-old. If you have disposable income, what do you suggest for those people who aren't worried about kids, who aren't worried about, a mortgage or things like that, and they have the disposable income? What advice do you have for that?
With that one, the biggest one there, save. Save for future planning, save for, especially when you have those large chunks, start that 401k like Zach said. Start those investments because there is going to become a time in their life, even it might not be right away, where something big they may want to do. So saving, because even when you have that, you do still have a budget. It's just going to look way different than what, say, mine would, or to say what yours would look like.
And then my other question is, what if you're interested in dating and you're a young man, you want to attract a certain young woman, you know, and I saw the thing with lifestyle inflation. The same can be true for a woman. She wants to attract a certain type of man and the money that it takes to do that. What advice would you have to somebody with that mindset?
With that mindset, the overall goal is to do whatever is going to make you happy. When it comes to couples, when you do start dating, let's say it's been 6 months to a year, come in together. That's a huge thing. Families come in together because everybody is part of money that's coming in. So when you're talking to a financial coach, we want everybody involved in those conversations. To start when you're first dating, yes, they're going to be two separate things, but as things progress, if they get married later, there are different things that we can help with those budgeting plans as your life changes as well.
Can I give one piece too, especially
Yes.
if we're talking for younger? We, as credit unions, offer other financial advice, the coaching, but also just advice about living on your own.
Yes.
And so, especially as kids are with you, if they can start preparing for something like that and start buying the essentials that are needed for home, not only will it probably help them appreciate you, but also get them prepared, like things like toilet paper, especially if you have space that they can start stocking some of that stuff to the side. Those non-perishables is a definite great way before they've moved out and it becomes super real that I need toilet paper, I need paper towels, I need towels to dry myself, I need towels to do my dishes, dishwashing fluid. All of those things can be a great conversation even for child and parent to discuss because of what's going to be needed. Right now, especially at home, that stuff just kind of magically appears sometimes. So later, when they're on their own, that's far less magical, and toilet paper is expensive. So stockpiling some of that while they're at home is definitely what I'd recommend too. Quickly, they'll realize it adds up, and maybe toss a thank you your way. Okay,
Ready to do
I think
questions?
so. We're going to dive into this trivia. It's going to be questions from what we learned today. So if you want to get signed in, there will be prizes. We have Amazon gift cards. First place will get $15. Second place will get $10. And third place will get $5. So please get signed in. If you haven't yet connected to Menti, you still can do so. It's Menti, MENTI.com. Code at the top is 98360971. I'll say that again in just one moment. Menti.com, MENTI. And the code is 98360971. So we have got 19 folks ready. We'll get started in just a moment, but give another moment. If for any reason at any time it kicks you out, remember just to refresh so you can get back in there. Oh, it's dropping 18, 19, 20. Okay. Sure. I'll read it for you, Gail. Do you have it? Yep, MENTI. Everyone is eligible, so please get on in there. I know it's so tiny. It's 98360971. Okay, if you need to refresh, because we've lost a couple of players. All right, we're going to get started. Are you in, Gail? Oh, no. Oh, 22, 21, 22. You can't choose your icon. It just selects that for you. Sorry. Did it go? Okay. Oh, sorry. One more time. 98360971. 0971. Okay. Ready? Who knows? All right, we're going to get started. Now, you have to answer correct, but also quickest is what gets you more points. So which budgeting method prioritizes savings or debt repayment? Automatic, zero sum, envelope, or reverse? Prioritizes savings or debt repayment? 3 seconds. All right. Awesome. A lot of you got that right. It is indeed the reverse method. That method, you prioritize the savings, debt repayment, and then with what's left, you allocate towards your other budgeting categories. Okay, question 2. What type of savings is geared towards paying for occasional expenses? Is that periodic, safety net, or long-term? Everyone's voted. Awesome. Let's see. Bless you. Perfect. Periodic savings. The bulk of you got that correct. That's perfect. We're going to see a leaderboard here. Let's see how everybody's doing. 2 more questions after this leaderboard, so it's anyone's game. It's going to show the top 10 only, but currently we have Kit Kat, Shammy, and Katie Toms in our 3rd place section. Question 3. Which of the following is not one of the 5 parts of creating an emergency savings? Is it easy access, depend on credit card, define emergency, or know your unknowns? Now, we may have talked about all of these, but which is not one of the 5 bubbles that was at the top? Nice, yeah. The bulk of you got that correct. So depending on a credit card can be a part of funding an emergency, but is not actually part of creating an emergency fund. Final question here, question 4. What do you want to consider when creating a budget? So choose the best answer. Is it goals, priorities, values, or all of the above? All right. Come on, 100%. Oh, so close. All of the above, indeed. You want to consider goals, priorities, values, all of that, all at once. Let's see if we had some shifting happen. All right, so Shammy is our 1st place winner. If we can grab a quick email from you so that we can send that. Zach, do you want to grab the emails and maybe write those down? We will send $15. Is that you over there? Perfect. So if you want to grab hers for the $15 gift card. We also have Simba in 2nd place for the $10 gift card right next, easy. And then Jim W will be our 3rd place right there, Zach, for the oh yeah, right next to her. Perfect. Awesome. Before we jump into activities, we thank you all for your time tonight, and just know that we're here to support and help you in any way, member or non-member of our credit unions. We're happy to be of help and assistance to our communities, but just want to know if there's any questions tonight over what we covered.
You have a couple more things.
Yes, but just want to address any questions before we jump into the activities. No questions? Covered it all? Yes. Awesome. Thank you. Oh, I love that. Awesome. Yeah, as I said, credit unions, we're so cooperative in nature. If you look across credit unions, it looks almost like an unfortunate tale because it looks as though we've lost many credit unions over the years. But really, a lot of us are just combining together to serve our communities in a greater way and work together. So even though sometimes we kind of refer to it as co-opetition, it's just cooperative in nature. So we share things like these presentations. We created this together. We have chapters. We go out. Just last week, we went up and cleaned up a large portion of Gold Camp Road. But just giving back to our communities is what credit unions truly value, people helping people. So if you want to learn more, always happy to talk about it. Yeah?
I just have a question, if it's okay.
Of course. That's fine.
Okay, so mine is about an IRA.
Okay.
And so the credit union I use, I cannot put into my IRA on my mobile app.
Oh.
Is that can I put money from checking savings into my IRA? Or or set up an auto amount that will pull from savings or checking into the IRA?
You can typically set up automatic, but you're right with online banking, just due to the requirements and also just the loss for words here, the maximum amount that you can do. So if we allowed some of that transferring, I'm not sure there's any institution that you can automatically transfer to one of those. That's a good question.
It's frustrating because you can't really put to it unless you
Yeah.
drive over there and
Yeah.
life's busy and then the banks are closed and you don't have any money.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely understand. It's just we're just limited to
Yeah.
a couple different regulations on those ones. And that's what's tough. Of course, that's a great way to save for retirement, but just the stipulations and some of the things that surround it make it hard. Yeah,
Of course, disposable income is hard to find these days.
indeed.
Would you recommend putting more money towards your principal and mortgage over starting an investment?
It's a great question, and it comes up often, especially when we're talking about debt repayment. The question was, would I recommend putting more money towards the principal on your mortgage or starting an investment? Always personal decisions. What I would say is, depending on the interest rate of the mortgage, and then what may be the potential interest rate on the investment. Of course, I say potential, say that knowingly with just the market and what happens. Mortgages, depending on if you got your mortgage during a certain time and what the rate is, some of those are as low in the 1s, 2s, 3s, unless you got it recently. Sorry, but rates are gonna fluctuate and change. Just depending on that. A lot of times we don't recommend putting more towards principal, just because if your interest rate's low, there's the potential to earn that. Let's say the interest rate, because even over time, over the last 50, 60 years, the average rate through the stock market S&P 500 is right around that 7, 8%. So if your mortgage is less than that, then the potential that you're putting towards the principal on your mortgage, then putting it into an investment. But recent years have been pretty weird across all averages, especially with the pandemic and different things. So all investments can typically be risky. What I might recommend instead is there's some great certificates of deposit. If you aren't familiar with those are usually just setting aside savings for a certain set amount of time, anywhere from 3 months, typically up to 5 years. They have some that are longer, but those rates right now are pretty stellar. Some of them are in the 3s, 4s. You can even find some in the 5s. So knowing you can put the money, whatever you were going to put towards principal, if you can put that into a CD, it's a guaranteed rate of return, no loss of principal involved. And there are some other tools that are like that. If that's a higher rate than what your mortgage is, you're going to make more than you're going to be putting towards principal.
Again, on that,
yeah.
can you do that online?
Those can be opened online. The one thing with certificates is they're
Put into them, like, to deposit.
depending on the product. So most certificates are you put the money in and it must be left alone for the term that you've determined, whether that's 3 months, 5 years. There are some that are priority certificates that you can add to one time. So you're able to transfer to that one time or deduct from that one time, because usually if you pull out of it before the designated time frame, it's usually a loss of that interest. So there was really no point in opening it either way. It's usually, it usually is 6 months or a year of interest depending on the term. But there's certain products that you can deposit to. There's also some that are like My Savings Builder that you can deposit to more frequently through online banking. But just look at the fine print. Know what you're putting the money into, because it's usually putting it aside and not touching it for whatever that set amount of time is. Had another question over here?
I have an 8-year-old up in college, and I was wondering so he doesn't have any like credit cards yet or anything like that.
Okay.
I've advised him not to so far. But what do you advise young people to do to build their credit?
Truthfully, a credit card is my number one advice, and only if they can use it responsibly, because certainly getting away with it, a kind of a funny joke that I make, but it's real, is if they can't trust themselves, freeze it in a bowl of ice so that they have to think about it and thaw that ice out before they use it. It just gives you more time to think. Also, just if you as a parent know that they're not going to be trustworthy and they're just compulsive people, because some of us are, having the card yourself and setting up one thing on it, whether that be the Netflix subscription, something else. That way it's getting paid every single month. They have no access to it at all. It's going to keep their capacity or utilization, how much they're using of that available balance, super low, and build the credit really fast without paying a dime. There's other things like secured credit cards or secured loans, but that is going to take some money up front, and then it's also going to have interest attached. So a credit card can be completely free. It's just a matter of whether you trust yourself, trust your child, all the things with it, and just covering those bases.
Is there something that parents advise their kids to like freeze their credit? You know, that's like a possibility where you can freeze so that they
Oh yeah.
can use that and also like they're not tempted to go pick up 5 credit cards.
Yeah, that's recently changed and depends on who you ask. I do recommend often doing a credit freeze, but the tricky part and the best part about that is knowing your usernames and passwords so that if you want to unfreeze it to either apply for a credit card, especially in the event of an emergency, something like care credit, if you're at a vet, if you're at a medical, if your credit's frozen, there's nothing they can do. They typically can't get around that. So the need to get in, especially now that it's more accessible, if you remember your username and password, and a lot of times, a lot of the phones are doing different passwords that they remember for you, those can be great. It's just having the access to do it if you need to do it and unfreeze it. Because sometimes it takes a minute. Usually if you unfreeze it, it's about 5 minutes. It's pretty quick, a lot quicker than it used to be. And then also, just having an idea, because sometimes if it's frozen and becomes unfrozen, they'll ask them a few additional security questions. So past addresses, employment, like, so knowing their information that's on their credit report. I know they're young, but like if they don't pass those questions, sometimes they can't get the credit either. Great question. Yeah. Yeah.
Are there minimum amounts that it takes to open it?
For some of them there are, depending on the product that you choose. A lot of just standard CDs, there's not a minimum. For priority ones that allow you to retake from it, deposit to it, those are usually $500 for the minimum. And then it's something else I didn't mention before, but I'd love to mention now. They call it CD laddering. If you haven't heard of that before, especially with the way that rates are right now, that can be a great method. So what you do in that case is, let's say you open one at 3 months, one at 6 months, one at 12 months, so that you can kind of split up so you can get some of those funds back earlier. And in the event that the rates increase on those or rates go a different way, you then have access to those funds earlier, because a lot of those rates right now, they're pretty similar. So right now you can get about the same rate on a 6-month CD as you can on a 2-year, just depending on where you're looking. So CD laddering is great to add that, and then you can kind of have lower amounts and still be making better dividends than on savings. Because right now for 6 months, I want to say when I looked last week, it was right around 3.5% APR. A standard for just a regular savings is usually, depending on where you're at, sometimes it can be 0.01, 0.10. CDs are certainly going to be a higher rate of return. Although it still isn't a ton, it's something. I hope that answered the question. Okay, great. Any other questions? Yes?
As far as savings for kids, like I've heard of the education one.
The 529?
Kids are young, I don't know if they're going to go to college.
Right.
Like, what kind of accounts or anything would you recommend for kids?
Yeah. So when it comes to savings and investments, it's always kind of up to whatever your risk appetite. They usually refer to your risk appetite as how willing are you to accept some sort of risk. So depending on how you feel about that, there's plenty of products that do not have a risk to the principal amount that you can look at. CDs are certainly one of them. Speaking with somebody at your bank or credit union to see what their options are. But certainly depending on the term that you have when they're young, if you're willing sometimes to go into it's a higher risk, higher reward, but also could be higher risk. So just knowing some of those and sometimes choosing multiple products. Maybe one that's a little riskier because you're willing to risk this amount on something like that because it could mean a big reward, but you're not willing to risk it all. And then something on like a 5-year CD because the rate's good. Kind of allocating those, not putting your eggs in one basket can be a great method. Certainly when it comes to those tax products, a 529, now who's to say what the rules, regulations around those are going to be in a few years? I'm hoping that Colorado gets more on board with allowing those to be used for K through 12 expenses. But for the time being, if it doesn't go to college, sometimes that can, and it's also opened up some trade schools, some other things, but if it's not used specific for higher education, the tax penalties are not going to be worth whatever the tax savings was over the years. Great question. Yeah.
I know that Air Academy has scholarship opportunities for high school students. There's any, if so, what are they?
We do. We work with local community colleges. So we work with Pikes Peak State College, Arapahoe Community College, Front Range Community College. We just started working with Ames and MSU. So those are specific scholarships that we offer through their scholarship program. We also work with UCCS in town. And then also through our website and through other websites here as well, there are scholarship opportunities that go directly through the Fannie Mae system. So especially while your kiddos are young, sometimes just trying out some different activities. I know that money is associated, but having an idea, especially sometimes the more eclectic the activity. I know that there was some big dollars in the last recent years for fencing scholarships, which is not a sport that's super popular around here, but sometimes the more eclectic activities they do, the less people that are going for those scholarships. So if they get into something that's a little less kind of mainstream, football, soccer, basketball, those are all great, but the number of people that are applying for those types of scholarships is certainly much larger. So if they've got some eclectic taste and want to try out something like a specific instrument, sometimes that's a great method to get them some additional scholarship dollars that less people will be applying for. So through the website, if you go to any of our websites and kind of just look up scholarship, it should certainly on the end side take you to this big tool that allows you to put in some of the activities and just see the types of dollars that are out there for scholarships. And it pulls from millions of dollars worth of scholarships that are out there, not specifically from our organizations, but from others. And then usually, because Air Academy, are those direct through the school specific, or is it?
I know it's an application program.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know if it's through the school, so
Got it.
much as through our foundation.
Oh, that makes sense, because ours are right through the schools. And then we also offer some scholarships. We work a lot with some of the military bases around. So we do specific scholarships for JROTC is some of the ones that we do right now. Yeah. Any other questions? Great. Well, yes, over there. Sure. Yes. All of us. Right now, you're getting certified?
We're getting certified. We
Okay.
have some that are already
Oh, great.
in our Denver metro area, but for here in Springs, we're getting certified this month.
Perfect. So congratulations, Super. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's completely free, and you do not have to be a member of any of our credit unions to access those financial coaches. And they'll talk about savings, budgeting, just lots of different things. They can sit down with you specific and go through those scenarios, debt repayment, a lot of different strategies. There's a lot of different things that are out there. I honestly don't always recommend Googling those. Some of the ones that are out there, things like debt settlement, not all of those are bad, but some of them are. So working with a professional, if that's something that you're wanting to go through, especially if it's free, and I promise it's not obligations. I understand that we work for a financial institution, but the core of financial coaching is not to ever sell any products. If it's the right thing for you, talking about something like a credit card or a loan may be what's right, but it isn't going to be to say, oh, you should definitely get that ENT secured something. That's not what it's about. It's about financial education, committing to our communities, and providing that financial education across to anyone that's seeking it. So I'll speak to mine, and then we can maybe go around the room. So at ent.com/financial coaching, ent.com/financial coach. If you go to the website and search for it too, it'll show the service centers that we currently have. We have just under 70 folks certified to be financial coaches across all of our locations. There's also virtual appointments and completely free. It usually starts with about 60 minutes. That's great to get an idea of what your goals are, what you're looking for. But if you need less time, more time, that's perfectly fine. And you do not have to be a member of any of our credit unions to do that. How about for Air Academy?
Air Academy is best just to call or coming to the branch, and then we can get you set up with an appointment, either virtually or with somebody at your local branches.
What is Super's process going to look like?
We will probably also request a phone call, set up an appointment.
Okay.
And do
Great.
or over.
Perfect. Awesome. Great. Any other questions? Yes. That's okay. So the one that I'm familiar with community colleges, that like the 50% match that the state does through those foundations, is that the one that you're referring to or something else? Oh. Oh. Okay. Apologies, I'm not familiar. Is anyone else familiar with that program?
I'm not either, sorry.
Yeah, if it's something brand new, we can definitely look into it. And if whatever I find, thanks for bringing that up, because we'll send it out to our financial coaches to get some research on and get wrapped around. That sounds like a great program. I know that there's already some state funding through community colleges specifically, where they're matching a lot of the state funds that are scholarships, which allow community colleges to offer about 50% more scholarships than they could do just otherwise through general funding and donations. So that's what I thought it was, but we'll definitely look more into that. Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to hand it off to Zach to do this final activity. As he said, there's also some budgeting sheets that he'll provide for you to look through those later. Definitely recommended that as you're going through those, you have some of your financial statements. And if you want to do that electronic, tons of methods. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, big thank you to Bree and Jen for presenting today. We've got some goals and action sheets coming around right now. So we're gonna give y'all a budget sheet at the end of tonight, and unfortunately it's gonna be homework. We're gonna go back to our school days and you got some work to do at home. But this is gonna help you frame that as you're going through your budgets. Your budget should be based on what your goals are. So on here, we've got two different sections. We've got long-term goals and short-term goals. You could have long-term goals of buying your first house, refinancing. Maybe it's getting an addition built onto your house or a deck, some kind of outbuilding. And then we have our short-term goals. So those are going to be more of those more immediate futures. It's easier to see those on the horizon. So take a minute, think about those goals, and this is a great time to get crazy. Think about that thing that you've always wanted to do and write it down. After we get all of those, we're going to talk about how we can kind of prioritize those, and it's all about what's important to you. You've got to make your budget work for you, not you working for your budget. So does anyone have any long-term, short-term goals they want to share? Yes?
You got a quote to replace all our flooring.
Okay, a quote to replace all your flooring. That's cheap, right? I think I saw another hand in the back here. Yeah, go ahead. Buying a new home, it's a great goal. And it is not easy in this market. Yeah. So does anyone know what like the normal down payment for a mortgage is? 20%. So average home prices here are in the 400,000s. You can probably find a house like 300, 350. So you're looking at 200, 300,000. And then as you're going through these, consider your budget. What are you doing right now to start saving for those? And sometimes we don't have anything we're doing to save for those things, right? That's what this exercise is about, is where is your money going and does it align with your long-term goals, with your values that we did earlier? Say that again? Oh yeah, Siri's got so many goals. And then our bottom section here is what actions are we taking? How are we connecting those long and short-term goals back to that budget? I was doing a financial counseling session with somebody that their long-term goal was also to buy a house. And then they started going, oh, I'm going to buy a new computer. I'm going to buy a TV. I need a new car. And I was like, okay, those are great. All of those are fine. What's the most important to you, though? So that should be the filter you're running that through, is what do you value? What's that long-term goal? What's important to you? All right, anyone have any questions? All right. Yeah, go ahead, Bree.
Just a quick statement of Zach asked, what are the things that you're doing to get your savings started? And I can't thank you enough for being here tonight. This is step one. Getting started, getting the information. This information is not readily available. How many of you learned about anything financial from friends or family? How many of you learned anything as you went through school? Did you take a personal financial management class? A couple of you, that's fantastic. How many of you learned it by making some mistakes? Yeah. Like I said earlier, it's not a non-Googleable thing, but the information that you get back is basically a fire hose full of misinformation at times and myths. And we spend so much of our time busting those myths. Myths like you have to carry a balance on a credit card in order for it to count. Or even the 20% down payment, it's not a necessity. Usually those are a minimum of 3 or 5%, but then you're going to have some additional costs associated. So just understanding some of that, reaching out if you have any questions at all, having the resources, knowing what things are available. So I cannot thank you enough for spending your time with us here tonight and just going through this information. If there's anything else that comes up, don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us or our credit unions. Happy to help you in any way. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here.
Yes, give yourselves a round of applause. Showing up tonight was that big first step. And I will contradict Bree just a little bit to say you don't see banks out here doing this kind of thing, giving back to their communities. I highly encourage all of you, get money out of your banks, support your local credit unions, because we can do stuff like this from that investment, from putting back into a credit union. I don't care if it's Air Academy or INT or Supers, just get it out of banks. They're not here, they're not supporting us on this local level. All right, so I've got one more activity for us tonight, and we've got some markers. So we're all gonna split up, and around the room, we've got some different alphabets laid out, and we're gonna get into groups. So I've got 5 of them around the room and 5 markers here, and we're just gonna line up behind it. One person's gonna write one thing they learned today that starts with the letter on the board, and then you're gonna hand it to the person behind them, and then you're just gonna keep going until you get the whole thing filled out or until we call time. Does anyone want to be our leaders for this? All right, we've got some over here. And feel free, get up and get into your spots there and get started. Melissa's gonna do one. All right, I won't throw it at you. Perfect, thank you. All right, I got one more marker. You guys want to do this one in the back here? Perfect. No, you don't have to start at A. You can start wherever you want. All right, we've got another one behind the camera here. We've got a couple more people's spots up here.